of people out there at the moment with uncertain futures. They don't know what they're going back to. They don't know, maybe they might even be thinking of doing something themselves. So remote working is something that a lot of people are not used to. But you've been doing this sort of thing for a number of years, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had a home office for a long time. So although there was often an office, there's always been an office at home. So I could work from home, and that's often where I prefer to work. So in recent weeks, I've been taking over the lounge area at the back of our house, which has got these wonderful open doors, so the whole back of the house opens up, and I can sit there in shade, although the sun is keeping me warm, and look out over the fields. It's wonderful. But then there can be times when my good lady wants to use the Hoover and the dishwasher and the tumble dryer and various other noisy pieces of equipment, and I have to pop upstairs to one of the spare bedrooms and work up there. So it's not all glorious.
No. So
we have to learn to work very flexibly, I think.
You have to be flexible. You have to just take it as it comes. But sometimes you're wanting to appear bigger than you are, grander than you are. I know lots of people pretend.
Yeah, from a company point of view, I've always been a limited company. I've never been a sole trader as far as my clients are concerned, because people worry about one-man bands. So what was one of the things that I put into the remote working book, to say, you can work from home and still beat the big boys. You just have to, have a professional website, have a professional email address, be a limited company, and look the part. So there are ways of using some smoke and mirrors, whilst of course if you don't have integrity at your core, then you'll struggle anyway.
Well, integrity, but also real knowledge, which you have. Your company is called Be More Effective, and that's what you've been doing for a number of years, helping people to be more effective, and also giving talks, professional speaking and all of that sort of thing, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had a fascinating career, really. I think coining the company as Be More Effective gives me a fairly high bar and high standard, because people expect me to be effective to begin with. So I wouldn't call it a cross to bear. It's a standard to achieve. And certainly I've had the honour of working with clients in most parts of the world, of different sizes, from small companies, international companies.
So this book, you've got 20 exceptional people that you've spoken to, given advice. I mean, clearly you've gone to your little black book, have you, and picked out some names. I mean, what sort of people have talked to you, and what sort of advice have they given?
It was fascinating how the book came together. I mean, I'm in a couple of WhatsApp groups where you've got different consultants or different business leaders. So there's a guy in the book called Lee who's runs a cleaning business in London. There are consultants like Kim, who teach stuff around social media. So there's people from different backgrounds, but they're through an extended period of time, really, of chatting to people on a WhatsApp group. More than anything else, they're just people who've come together and been referred in, and we've bantered back and forth for a period of time. And when the COVID situation hit, a lot of people in that group said, well, we've got to do something to help. What can we do to help? So knowing that most people were going to have to work from home, and probably an awful lot of people had not worked from home, the topic of remote working came up. And you're right, a number of authors, 24 in total, put their hands up from that group and said, well, I could write a chapter. So we all committed to write a chapter of 1,500 to 2,000 words, on the basis that you could read that over a cup of coffee in a kind of typical coffee break. Not that we stand around coffee machines in a workplace kitchen anymore at the moment, but it's easy enough to consume in small bites. And we also then agreed that we would not take any royalties from the book, and working with a publisher, Andrew Priestley, he agreed only to take cost for actually getting it to market. And when eventually it does make profits, because if it becomes a bestseller even at 99p on Amazon across the world, you end up making some profits, then those profits would go to a children's charity that's helping people during this lockdown crisis, younger people. So yeah, it came together in an incredibly fast way. So from conception to the first PDF approved being uploaded to Amazon, it was 10 days.
Oh, that's not bad going.
But that is just like, I mean, I've written books myself.
Yeah.
So The Value House, our first book, and Persuade, the second book. I mean, they took months. Persuade to go a couple of years to write.
And how did you find this publisher? Did you already know the publisher?
Yeah, he was in the group. Yeah, Andrew Priestley was in that leadership group. In fact, he started the leadership group years before. So this is amazing. I don't know what you feel, Carla, but this crisis has thrown up communities in interesting ways. Now, whether that's the little village I live in and the WhatsApp group that the village now have, or whether it's this group of business consultants and leaders that were already chatting on WhatsApp, there was a heart to do something and to give something. So yes, it's nice to have the #1 bestseller tag on my profile, so I can now claim 3 of those. But in fairness, if you've got 24 authors promoting one book right across their own networks, it shouldn't be that hard to get to #1 in Amazon for a period of time. So it's much harder to do that if you're a solo author. But the thing that's really struck me during this COVID time is just how many independent groups of people have come together to volunteer to help either their local community or some people down their street, or like this group of authors trying to help a large number of people think about different ways of working from home. But that's the thing that's really fascinated me. Not so much the book, it's the fact that there's a spirit of community that's been birthed out of this crisis.
Yes, there's a good human spirit. There's kindness. There's a lot of kindness out there, and I think that's what is very apparent within communities. In our own community, I've just done an interview with Rotarians who are doing a tremendous amount of work. They're trying to help small charities, the ones that don't normally get a look in, who are really worried about the future. And it's really heartening to know that there is help out there.
It's one of the things that social media gives us, really. It gives authors of all kinds of creative content a chance to find a voice, find a place, and that's exciting. I think there's a lot of creativity inside everybody. There's an old saying, isn't there? There's a book inside every one of us. The question is only as to whether it will ever get out.
No, it's that, but also finding the right topic and then picking the right time to do it. And certainly remote working, it's the right time to do it, and must be, because lots of people want it. So the key information there that so people were busy writing, and you were thrilled presumably to get some of these pieces, but which ones in particular stand out in your opinion?
Oh, that would be harsh on the that would be harsh on anyone I didn't pick. I'm fascinated by the breadth of content. What did impress me was that we didn't collaborate on the titles of the chapters. So you can imagine throwing the challenge out. And this happened both for the leadership book, Fit for Purpose Leadership 6, as well as remote working. We just asked people to contribute and volunteer for that. And you'd thought you'd have to, as the editor, as the group of authors, kind of collaborate and go, okay, I'll write from this angle and you write from that angle. And we have people who've written about home working from a breathing point of view, from a mental health point of view, from a kind of pragmatic business point of view, which is more the angle I've taken. You've had some who've talked about the use of different social media tools or different online resources. And there is a little bit of overlap across the chapters, but you just have this real wealth of experience and depth of experience, and yet you've got a very useful breadth of experience. So for me, that's the most impressive thing about both those books, is that you'd have thought you'd have contradictions. You'd have thought you had to do a lot of editing and get some people to swap content. Now, Andrew had a pretty easy job, really, from that regard. So I wouldn't want to lift any one of the authors up in particular, but I would like to raise them all up. But I think the most fascinating thing for me is the way that the collaboration actually happened. And, you know, I'm a fairly spiritual person, being a Christian, and it's like there was something coordinating it, and call it what you will. We all have different beliefs. I don't want to impose mine on anybody. That was just a magic in it coming together. So that was very impressive.
And then you've got the design, the book design. I mean, it's got to look good, hasn't it? So was that somebody within your group that did that?
Yeah, that was. I don't know if Andrew did the drawing himself, but Andrew did that. We literally trusted him with that and said, you know, he's a publisher, so he'll have graphic designers, I'm sure, that worked on it. I don't know the name of the designer, but his first design we approved. It was one of those other things that just kind of came together in an instant.
Yeah.
And there was no debate. Where there was a debate, interestingly, was from Amazon, who really didn't like the reference to COVID or the coronavirus or lockdown, and so there was a real backwards and forwards between the Amazon platform. And we struggled more with the leadership book than with remote working, but both were rejected at different stages. Even having already been published, then Amazon must have these kind of robots which crawl over the content in the book. And the leadership book was taken down by Amazon a couple of times because they're going, well, we don't like this phrase in there. I guess there is a fear that some people were trying to sell, maliciously would be the wrong word, but you know, stuff to the general public, which, you know, was meant to help them during this crisis and wasn't kind of authentic. So even it was interesting that Amazon had that policing and checking going on, because I would never have imagined that they did. So that was fascinating. But
that is interesting, because you just think it's an automatic process done by robots doing it. So it's nice to know that actually there are people policing it. But so you are able then to communicate presumably by email or something like that, or on the phone to somebody. I mean, you know.
Andrew did most of that work through the Amazon platform, but they were, you know, late into the night sometimes trying to understand what they'd found and what needed to come out. So yeah, that was a fascinating part of it.
Yeah. So were you actually able to put the word COVID in at any point, or did that come out? Not at all.
So that we struggled with, you know, particularly with the leadership book.
Yes, that is really interesting.
Remote came out first in response to the immediate crisis, and then a number of the other authors in the WhatsApp group that didn't contribute to remote working said, why don't we do something for the leaders of businesses? So we've done something for everybody. Remote working applies to everybody who's in work, because they're going to have to learn to work from home, and that's probably going to carry on post-COVID, I'd say, for a lot of people. But what about the business leaders? How do we help the business leaders run their companies during a period of crisis? You know, what are some of the leadership strategies that are going to help them keep their businesses alive, keep their staff employed? So a number of people developed a passion for that side, and some of the same authors like myself wanted to play. So we approached it in the same way. We asked for 25 authors as the maximum. We asked everybody to write a chapter, 1,500 words to 2,000 words. We sent them all to Andrew Priestley. He put them together, and the book came out. That took a little bit longer than the 10 days for remote, but not much longer. So again, the teamwork really impressed me, and the way that everybody helped each other, and there was a lot of joint promotion going on. But my original bestseller, because those two were during the crisis, is a book called Persuade: How to Persuade Anybody About Anything. And that I wrote with my best buddy, the best salesman and best sales trainer I've ever worked with, a guy called Nick Baldock. Nick sadly died a few years ago.
Yes.
Of a heart attack, which
that was a big shock, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was a big shock. You know, Nick he'd run the length of the UK. He'd done a lot of running in his career. He'd run right across America. He'd run through Death Valley. I ran through Death Valley with him once. He ran through Death Valley with somebody else another time. I ran the UK with him in 2001, and he helped us with the PR campaign for that, to raise some money for a little boy called Podge, who'd been taught. Nick was the co-author of the original bestseller.